Greening Water Infrastructure, Jobs, and Policy for Multiple Health Outcomes. This is the 5th in our 6-part webinar series on water strategies for health leadership. My name is Katie Mauman. I'm the Water Initiative Coordinator with the Public Health Alliance of Southern California. And I'm joined as a controls by Holly Calhoun, our Food Systems Working Group Coordinator, and Grace Abusman. The Public Health Alliance of Southern California is a collaborative of local health departments in the region. We focus on multi-sector policy, systems, and environmental change to improve population health and equity. And just before we get started today, I want to cover a couple of quick housekeeping items as usual. I wanted to let everyone know that we're going to be keeping the audio lines open during the hour. We really want to hear from everybody on the call, especially during the question and answer and discussion section, which will be at the last 20 minutes or so of the hour. So we really envision this as a learning community, so you have the opportunity not just to ask questions, but to share some of your work as well. And again, while we do want to hear from you, background noise will be distracting. So please go ahead and mute yourself when you're not speaking by using this little icon here, the top arrow. And if you joined in the audio via your computer, you'll need a microphone to speak. However, if you join by telephone, you just need to enter the audio pin displayed on your control panel. So please go ahead and send us a question if you need help with audio or anything else. And again, you can also submit questions for the panelists throughout the presentations, and we'll hold those aside for our discussion period. I wanted to let everyone know that we are recording today's webinar. We're going to go ahead and post the recording and presentation slides, as well as some additional resources that we'll touch on today. So please go ahead and share that link with colleagues who are unable to join. We'll be sending that out some days after the webinar. And if at any time you experience any technical difficulties, you can go ahead and send a question to one of our staff. So with that, I just wanted to turn our attention to our topic today. We're really going to be looking at some local state connections. There's really so much moving with water at the state level, and realizing that it's impossible for local health department staff and leaders to really track it all. We have two really great speakers with us today who are going to help us cut through a lot of that and really shine a light on opportunities and highlights that are relevant to local health departments. So we're first going to hear from Karen Trigovich, who's the Chief Deputy Director of the State Water Resource Control Board. And Karen oversees the Division of Water Rights and the Division of Administrative Services, among other responsibilities. Karen's worked in a lot of different areas with the board, including planning, permitting, enforcement, grants, and site cleanup, and she's been with the board since 2007. Karen was previously with US EPA Region 9 and also worked with the former California Integrated Waste Management Board and the Department of Toxic Substances Control. So Karen, thanks so much for being with us today. And then after we hear from Karen, we'll be hearing a little bit from Alvaro Sanchez, a really wonderful thinker and leader on environmental equity and social justice issues. Alvaro is Environmental Equity Director at the Greenlining Institute. He's an urban planner by training with extensive experience crafting, implementing, and evaluating strategies that leverage both private and public investments to deliver community benefits to impacted communities. So Alvaro is leading Greenlining's work on SB 535, which directs at least 1/4 of California's greenhouse gas reduction fund to disadvantaged communities. So while Karen will be looking at kind of the regulatory and policy lens on local state connections, Alvaro will be touching on some funding and green job opportunities through an equity lens. So we're really fortunate to have these two wonderful speakers with us today. And with that, I'd like to go ahead and turn the floor over to Karen Trigovich.
Okay, thank you so much. I'm just trying to figure out which one I'm pulling over. I'm pulling over my main monitor. So if you can let me know what you see right now.
That's it. We see the slide presentation there, so you can go ahead and get that going.
So, all right.
Perfect.
So you have the first slide is up on your end?
That's right.
Very good. Well, thank you, everyone, and I appreciate you taking the time and spending your lunch hour with us today. You just heard who I am, so I'm going to move forward here. I thought I'd spend just a couple minutes talking about what the State Water Board does. I don't know the extent to which all of you interact with us, but our portfolio is pretty broad, and it seems to be growing by leaps and bounds these days, much to our chagrin. Our traditional portfolio is really one of water quality and water rights. But just to take the first bullet, we develop statewide water quality protection policies and plans. Here, I want to move this out of the way. I apologize. Okay. And those plans come in the form of our ocean plans, water quality control plans for inland bays and estuaries. We have a variety of water quality control plans around the state, and then we operate through a series of 9 regional water quality control boards, and they each have their own basin plans, which contains the policies and objectives for maintaining water quality, improving water quality in the regions. And through those plans, we established the water quality standards that so many of the regulated community are required to meet or to operate through the form of permits, certifications, and other regulatory actions that we take. We also, as you all well know, now have the wonderful opportunity of integrating the water quality and drinking water components, and with the Division of Drinking Water joining us in 2014. And that's been a tremendous asset to the programs of the State Water Board, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in a few minutes. We also allocate water rights, so the state's water rights system, which is really in many respects a 2-part system that's defined by a distinct year, and that's 1914. We administer permits and certificates and other types of regulatory actions with respect to all the water rights that came forward after 1914. And we try to do our best to be able to guide all of those with water rights prior to 1914, because while they don't fall within our permit and regulatory program, they still must live within the operational requirements that the state has set forth for those kind of water uses. We also adjudicate water right disputes. We seem to be having a lot of those these days. And we guide the 9 regional water boards. So I talked a little bit earlier about the 9 regional boards. They are semi-autonomous organizations with their board members serving locally, with the staff reporting to the board, but the State Water Board establishes statewide policy, and we control the purse strings. Current board priorities, I wanted to spend a minute just to let you know kind of what is really hot on our plate right now. Where do we spend most of our time? Well, our time, of course, has been spent on the drought, and I understand you've certainly heard a lot about that, and you've had prior sessions where you've talked about all the various activities that we're responsible under the drought for. The first on our list is conservation. Our numbers for conservation achievement for the month of September will be coming out either tomorrow or Friday. Originally they were planned for tomorrow. We may move it to Friday. So we've been spending a lot of time on emergency regs there. We've been spending a lot of time working with communities on local water supply issues, whether it's because communities are affected because of incredibly low reservoir levels, which are affecting their ability to run their pumps, or whether it's because they're in the Central Valley reliant on groundwater and that groundwater is drying up. We've been spending a lot of time at the state level and locally working with OES, and I'm sure many of you, on coming up with those local solutions. We've been spending a lot of time on water availability, that is, how much water is actually in our rivers, streams, and reservoirs, and how much of it is really available to serve all the demand that exists in the state. And we've had to tell many, many parties this year that there just isn't enough water to serve them, and they'll have to find alternative supplies other than their surface water sources. And then minimum water for fish, that's been a big issue this drought. with it continuing this year into its 4th year, a possible 5th year on the horizon. We are seeing our fisheries adversely affected in incredible ways, and we've been working this year to establish what we call belly scraping flows in key fisheries, and many of those are North Coast fisheries and some Central Valley fisheries, and if we move into a 5th year of drought, I expect to see more of that next year. Prop 1 rollout, that's a big deal for us, and hopefully there'll be many of your areas that will be taking advantage of the money that's going to become available. All of the agencies that have some of the Prop 1 money under them have been working incredibly hard to get their guidelines developed and to begin to get that money out the door. We here at the State Water Board have developed a single application process, and what that means is that anyone at the local level who wants to apply for money that the State Water Board has, and we have many pots of money, need only submit one application, tell us what it is you want to do, and we will work with you to mix and match and put the best financial package together. So you don't need to apply to each grant program or loan program individually. Small community assistance, you know, I talked about it under the Prop 1 rollout as well as the drought response. I called it out here because of the emphasis on small disadvantaged communities especially, but I wanted to mention under this bullet that we have established an Office of Sustainability. It was actually called for in a piece of legislation signed by the governor this last year. And that Office of Sustainability is really designed to provide technical and financial assistance to small disadvantaged communities. And the staff in that office are working to reach out to local communities, to the local governing bodies, local health agencies to make them aware of this opportunity. And they put out a newsletter, and there have been a number of newsletters which have been put out by the office covering all sorts of topics related to drinking water, wastewater, septic systems, etc. We're also spending a lot of time on oil and gas, the oil and gas industry. Fracking's been a big issue. The Division of Oil and Gas and their management of their program has been a big issue, and it has been a priority for the board to work with Dogger over this last year to provide a program that manages oil and gas activities as well as their discharges in a way that's credible and that the public finds appropriate for what's going on out there. We are moving into a period, moving to the next bullet, Bay Delta and California water fix. That is a huge priority for the board. I'm sure all of you have heard of the proposal by the Department of Water Resources and U.S. Bureau of Reclamation to construct twin tunnels that will pull water out of the Sacramento River north of the Delta, and it'll take it around the Delta down to the pumping facilities at Tracy. And we're going to be moving into a period with a notice going out later this week or next announcing the initiation or beginning of the hearing process to start to obtain testimony on what it is that's being proposed. That will be a very big task for the board. And then finally, in-stream flow standards. So for the State Water Board, I talked a little bit ago about belly scraping flows during the drought that we've been looking to establish just to maintain key fisheries. But what we're looking at more broadly over this year and the coming 3 to 4 years is looking at all of our key watersheds around the state and figuring out how much water is needed to remain in stream to protect those public trust uses. So communities that want to be able to go swim and fish in their local rivers and streams, that there will be sufficient water available for those and other uses. So what I wanted to talk specifically about a few things that I thought might be of interest to you. I understand you're certainly interested in the drinking water program in transition, but there's a few other topics that I have listed on the bullets that I want to be able to cover with you as well. And so I'm just going to move into those now. As you all know, the Division of Drinking Water transferred to the State Water Board. It's been well over a year now, and I have been working in state government and the federal government for 30 years,
And I have never seen a transition, frankly, go this smoothly. And I think it had a lot to do with, one, talking to departments and agencies that had undergone transitions prior to us and figuring out what went well and what didn't well. But it had mostly to do with the team from the Division of Drinking Water and the State Water Board that came together and worked on the transition, from things like information technology resources and how that was going to work, to just phone lines, to office space, to personnel issues, classification issues, funding issues, etc. We had sub-teams created that had both current State Water Board staff and new Division of Drinking Water staff on them that worked through each one of those issues. They developed a transition plan, an implementation plan associated with that, and they carried it out, and they developed a newsletter to help all of the employees that are affected by the consolidation know what was going on at any given point. So the slide that you have up is showing how the Division of Drinking Water came into the State Water Board. Just for what it's worth, the Deputy Director for the Division of Drinking Water reports directly to Tom Howard, our Executive Director. That was very important when the legislation was moving through. It was important to make sure that the Division of Drinking Water and all of its programs were elevated and given the appropriate time and deference that they needed to be able to work effectively. And so that's what the org chart on the screen in front of you shows. We did, if you'll look on the right side of that org chart under Jonathan Bishop, who's the Chief Deputy Director for Financial Assistance and Water Quality, we built out under him some of the section areas or branch areas where the consolidation also occurred. So in addition to bringing in the division as its own standalone division, the financial assistance staff were integrated into our existing financial assistance programs. And so you'll see that in the yellow boxes on the right. And I think that's been working extremely well. And it's allowed us to really take advantage of the synergies between the two financial programs. And I know that Darren Polhemus, who is the Deputy Director for our financial assistance programs, has really focused his attention on integrating the safe drinking water programs into our existing clean water programs. So program integration status, I would just talking to you about the mechanics of kind of how we made it work with all the sub-teams. But looking at the bullets on the right, which are kind of what's going on, I talked about the physical integration, and that is continuing on an ongoing basis. And really what we're focusing on now more than anything is, are there opportunities to further integrate the Division of Drinking Water locally within their branch and district offices? So where opportunities come up for them to join in trainings, to integrate with our local regional water board staff, we're trying to take advantage of that. Our program management integration has been very effective, and it is continuing, and the Division of Drinking Water participates in all of our routine and high-level management meetings. Division of Drinking Water program priorities have been integrated into the State Water Board's program priorities, and our interagency relationships have been developing and are continuing to develop. For example, we have memorandums of understanding with various entities, with CDPH related to lab and other services, with OES and others that may have pre-existed the transition, but are also now re-upped and continuing forward as the division continues its important work. On the right side of that slide, what have been really the benefits that we've seen? Well, I think first and foremost is transparency through a board process. I've worked in departments and boards throughout my career, and a board process does provide opportunity for ongoing public input, and there is a greater emphasis because of the uniqueness of board processes to transparency. And so there is a tremendous amount of information that is available. Some of you may say too much information, but it is available on the website, and we continue to be responsive through public forums at the board's twice monthly meetings, as well as through emails, letters, etc. The Transition Advisory Group continues to meet. I believe it's met approximately 4 times, and they continue to provide their input on program performance, efficiency in our funding programs, permitting, etc. We have expert panels that have been formed, for example, the Direct Potable Reuse Expert Panel, and we have advisory groups that are assisting us in some of these key policy areas. And then program reviews. We've recently undertaken a program review of the ELAP program that's in progress right now, and I'm sure you'll be hearing more about that. So Division of Drinking Water priorities, I won't spend a lot of time on this, in part because the information that I'm providing is information that I think that the division has present on its website, and you can learn a lot more there. But curtailment compliance orders, I wanted to highlight this one more than the others because I think it's really a demonstration of the integration between the State Water Board and the Division of Drinking Water that's really been so very positive. So in this extreme drought condition that we find ourselves in, as we have been telling folks with surface water supplies that there is not enough water to support your demand because you may be more junior in your water right priority, the Division of Drinking Water has then come in behind those notices and begun to work with those communities that are affected by dwindling water supplies to, 1, find them alternate supplies, and 2, get them on a path towards finding a more safe, secure, and reliable long-term supply. Arsenic compliance orders are ongoing. I'm not going to hit a lot of these bullets. I talked about disadvantaged community assistance. The Safe Drinking Water Plan was adopted. It's on the website as well. If you haven't looked at that, there's an extensive series of recommendations, and there's an implementation plan related to those recommendations that is definitely worth looking at. The other bullets, those are ongoing efforts, regulation adoption, as well as collaboration with other divisions and regional water boards. We have a bi-monthly meeting of management across all of the State Water Board, deputy directors, and all of the Regional Water Quality Control Board executive officers. And there's been a tremendous amount of collaboration that's been initiated through those meetings between the Division of Drinking Water and the regional boards. And I think everyone will tell you that it's really led to far more comprehensive and thoughtful policies and regulatory actions. So just a few other topics I want to hit. And Katie, I have lost my clock on both my screens somehow as a result of this webinar, so let me know when I need to be winding up. I know it's soon.
Yeah, thanks, just probably a couple more minutes.
Okay, but our on-site wastewater treatment system policy implementation, or the OTS policy, I'm sure many of you are developing your local agency management plans right now. The timeline for submittal is up on the screen, but that's been a very extensive process. Well information, I just wanted to hit that quickly because a lot of folks may not realize it, but legislation was signed by the governor this last year that now makes well completion reports public documents. And we are in the process right now of getting stakeholder input on whether or not we should simply make all of the well completion reports associated with our groundwater ambient monitoring program, GAMMA, available to the public rather than having them have to go through GWR. Dry wells, I just wanted to spend a few seconds on that. The statistics are up there. That's as of yesterday, so almost 3,000 reported dry wells. Almost all of those are in Central California, and you can guess where they are in the San Joaquin Valley. But there are a smattering of wells in other areas of the state. And the administration is really spending a lot of time to try to figure out how to address these small, very small systems or individual domestic wells. So we have a lot of problems with small systems, as you well know, between 15 and 200 connections. But these are folks that fall below that 15 connection limit. And we're really looking to try to get local support, input, assistance, and ideas on how to address these local and very sad situations where folks are running out of supplies. Implementation of the statewide Sustainable Groundwater Management Act is ongoing. We're just concluding a series of meetings around the state to kind of sum up what's been done this last year, and an awful lot has been done. But this program is really about local management of groundwater, and it's likely going to impact things that you are doing within your departments related to your well permits. There may be drives in some areas for adoption of local ordinances that may look to really try to constrain some of the well drilling that's been going on around the state, and I'm sure you have questions and interactions on that. I've put up a slide on key dates for local agencies for implementation of the Groundwater Management Act. They're on your screen. I'm sure those of you that are in critically overdrafted basins or high priority basins have been hearing about this, and hopefully you are involved in the local efforts to form groundwater sustainability agencies. And I think that's as far as I have. I think there was one slide, Katie, that I had provided on resources. It's kind of the tip of the iceberg, but I think that that'll be made available to you later. And with that, I'll stop there.
Great, Karen. Thank you so much. What a wonderful presentation with so much great information. I'm hoping that everybody can jot down your questions and thoughts that are coming to mind about your local jurisdiction as well. And we'll hold those for the discussion section. And meanwhile, we'll just take some time to hear from Alvaro Sanchez, again, Environmental Equity Director at the Greenlining Institute. Thanks so much for being with us, Alvaro.
Thank you for having me, I'm really happy to be part of this webinar and sharing some of the work that we've been doing. So hello, everyone. My name is Alvaro Sanchez. I'm the Director of Environmental Equity at the Greenlining Institute, and I'll be talking to you today about creating pathways out of poverty, really using investments that are being made in water infrastructure and in climate investments that the state of California is leading on. But before I dive into all of that, just want to give a little bit of background on the Greenlining Institute itself. The Greenlining Institute, based out of Berkeley, California, is a research, advocacy, and coalition building organization that really started in the financial sector. The name Greenlining is essentially our response to redlining and the financial sector keeping communities of color and low-income communities out of economic opportunity. So we set out on a mission to make sure that regardless of where you were born and what zip code you live in, that you had access to economic opportunity. So since the roots of our organization started in finance, we've been really thinking about how investment represents economic opportunity for low-income folks and for people of color throughout the country, but with a specific focus on California. We have several programs, and one of them is the one that I'm privileged to lead on, and that's the Environmental Equity Program. The reason why the Greenlining Institute focused on the Environmental Equity Program was because we realized that low-income folks and people of color are the first and worst hit by by pollution and by climate change. The statistics, I think have continued to show that when a natural disaster or a man-made disaster happens, usually is the most vulnerable among us that are bear the brunt of calamity. what we saw in Hurricane Katrina in New Orleans is that folks literally did not have money to escape the oncoming storm. And what we see throughout the country and in California is that whether it's drought, whether it's high temperatures, is the most disadvantaged among us that are really not able to respond to the dire need that our environment is creating. So for us, environmental equity has become a key issue for us to focus on, and we've been doing so for several years now. The reason why we are focusing on things like green infrastructure as a climate investment is because we see this as an opportunity to create triple bottom line outcomes. Those types of outcomes that improve the living conditions of people, that improve the planet, and that create prosperity, especially for the folks that are bearing the brunt of our issues. And what we believe is that infrastructure, while many people feel that it's, kind of a basic type of strategy, for us, it's a critical strategy because we feel that when we get infrastructure right, we get a lot of things right. Because if we are able to diversify the supply chain that provides infrastructure, if we're able to provide jobs using infrastructure investments, and if we're able to plan with community needs the way that infrastructure is deployed, we are addressing multiple needs at the same time. So for us, green infrastructure has become this key model to uplift and show how we are able to address multiple issues in communities at the same time. And as it relates to this conversation today, as we just heard from our previous panelist, there is so much water regulation that is driving investments in infrastructure that we really need to look at and make sure that as those investments are being made, they're being made with equity at the center and with a lens that delivers multiple benefits beyond just improving water quality, but also being able to improve economic outcomes, public health outcomes, and social outcomes in disadvantaged communities. So I'll focus a lot on green infrastructure as a key way to do that as it relates both to water investments and climate investments that the state is leading on. So, green infrastructure, why are they good? In my previous workplace at Green for All, I used to go across the country to talk about green infrastructure and the opportunity that it provided, especially to folks with barriers to employment. What we found is that green infrastructure jobs are career ladder jobs and that they have easy access points and low barriers, low thresholds of entry. And many of them require just either a high school diploma or even just a GED to be able to start down the path of a green infrastructure job. Many of them, if you move up the ladder, become protected jobs. Many of them are within public, public water agencies, public parks agencies. So there's a lot of unionization that happens within the green infrastructure job sector. Many of them offer good living wage jobs in relationship to how they are union jobs. And again, they become, they're really accessible, especially for young folks. We saw that a lot of young folks who were entering the space through a conservation corps, for example, had really good pathways out of the poverty situation that they lived in. So what kind of jobs are we talking about? Really, we're thinking about the entire supply chain of jobs. And what we've been seeing is that there's been a lot of progress being made in terms of looking at the infrastructure investment from like a entire supply chain perspective, and really looking at the installation and design, looking at operations and maintenance, which is a critical issue and one that I focused on a lot in my research, and really looking at the supply chain and making sure that as the supply chain incorporates businesses in disadvantaged communities, that we have policy that's crafted that encourages contracting opportunities with those types of businesses. I just really want to focus on the fact here that when we are doing this work and when we're advocating and pushing policy to increase the use of green infrastructure as an infrastructure strategy, that we don't just focus in on the installation jobs, because we know that folks need more opportunities than just doing installation construction work. We have capable folks and folks with businesses already that can do the actual design, architecture, and the science behind some of these very complicated, systems that when they work well, they do wonderful things. But if any of these green infrastructure systems are faulty, it actually creates more problems than they solve. So I want to transition from talking about specifically what kinds of economic opportunities are created through the use of green infrastructure to talking about some funding opportunities that are driving investment in this arena. The Green Lending Institute, along with several organizations, co-sponsored a bill, SB 535, many of you may be familiar with it, that directs revenue from the Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund to disadvantaged communities. And it directs 25% of that revenue for projects that benefit disadvantaged communities, and 10% of that revenue has to be allocated to projects that are invested within those disadvantaged communities. So in Southern California, many of the communities that are facing the brunt of environmental challenges are these disadvantaged communities. And what we're seeing is that revenue is going to be directed towards them. Last year, in the fiscal year 2014-2015, $272 million were targeted disadvantaged communities. And in this fiscal year, although they haven't decided yet exactly what the final amount is going to be, we're looking at an increase of the 272 to somewhere between 750 upwards to $1 billion. And within the system of the Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund, there are several opportunities where green infrastructure is specifically being allocated funding, or at least is one of the eligible expenses that programs can apply for. So in urban and community forestry, a program that's administered by CAL FIRE, urban greening is a component that in the first year was not as emphasized, but moving forward, starting this year, is going to be a piece of infrastructure that's going to be really emphasized for the multiple benefits that I described earlier. So as you can see, the proposal is for them to receive $38 million for fiscal year 2015-2016, but unfortunately, that funding has not been approved yet. So we're working hard to make sure that happens. And also, for the Affordable Housing and Sustainable Communities Program, what we're seeing is that the program for green infrastructure has been much more incorporated into the program itself. So whereas last year a lot of the projects that applied for this funding did not emphasize green infrastructure as much, in this upcoming year we can see that happening more because the guidelines themselves are giving points in the scoring criteria for selecting these projects that relate to green infrastructure. So as we see their funding increase, we're also going to see more emphasis on green infrastructure. And the last one that I want to cover is this local climate action plans, which is a proposal. It's not yet approved, but local climate action plans would provide $500 million targeted at disadvantaged communities for projects that the disadvantaged community themselves agrees to, and is something that they want to spend their money on. So what we see with campaigns like the Green Up Cleanup projects here in Southern California and LA, a lot of them have green infrastructure as a component of those plans, and those plans would be eligible for this type of funding. So next, I want to spend some time talking about other drivers of investment, and specifically thinking about infrastructure. So in my previous line of work, I used to look at this report card by the American Society of Civil Engineering, and we always, highlighted the fact that infrastructure in the United States usually got a bad grade. And what we can see here is in California, urban runoff gets a D+ grade, which means that a lot of work needs to be done, and that but what that represents is a lot of investment. So the figures that they have there is that in order to get our infrastructure up to par, we need $3.6 billion for parks, and $6.7 billion over the next 10 years just to improve our stormwater infrastructure, which, as you know, improves our overall water quality. So for us, this means key opportunities to make sure that the investments that are made are done with an equity lens. And then on the other side of the slide, you see cities that are leading in their stormwater infrastructure investments, and many of those, and I'll highlight Los Angeles, I think has become really a lot more aware about how they do their investments using an equity lens. But of course, there's a lot more work that needs to be done in that arena. So to make this a little bit more real, I just wanted to mention a couple of case studies of organizations and projects that I've looked into as they have invested in this green infrastructure strategy and have been able to really deliver multiple benefits off of the investment. So the first one is Koreatown Youth and Community Center, they've done a great amount of work planting trees in some of the most disadvantaged communities here in the city of LA. And what they do that's really fantastic is that they're able to provide workforce development opportunities for young folks that want to participate in their programs, and they have begun building relationships with folks like the LA Conservation Corps to make sure that they provide pathways for folks that are receiving training to do more employment-based training, and then subsequent to that move into pipelines towards union jobs. And we see this relationship with the Conservation Corps really clearly with the South Los Angeles Wetlands Park, which is an investment that was done by the LA Bureau of Sanitation in South LA to create a wonderful amenity for the community in what used to be a parking lot for city trucks. So now they've been able to create this wonderful new amenity, and the folks that are responsible for doing a lot of the work, especially the operations and maintenance work, are folks from the LA Conservation Corps. So here's where we see these relationships and these multiple outcomes-based strategies that I think are models for the way that we can do investment in infrastructure in a way that advances many goals that we have. And really, the work that we're trying to do here is just to take what's invisible to something that's invaluable. And this is a phrase that I use often as it relates to infrastructure, especially water infrastructure, because a lot of folks tend to not really think about it as much because, most of the time it's something that's underground. But really, it's an invaluable piece of infrastructure, and if we do it with an equity lens, I think that we're also taking an invaluable piece of infrastructure, which is untapped potential and economic potential in disadvantaged communities, and really make it invaluable to progress our overall society as a whole. And when we work at the center of health benefits, economic opportunity, climate investments, or water investments, is really where we see multiple benefits being able to be achieved. And specifically, what I would say about local health departments and the way that you all could really engage in being able to advance this mission is to connect with folks that are doing the work that's not necessarily 100% related to public health, but it's related to advancing, opportunity in disadvantaged communities. So what we're seeing a lot more of now is work, groups that are working on environmental justice or economic justice or social justice, beginning to work more aligned with folks in the public health field. Us ourselves are building better relationships with public health departments, and this is one example of it, as a way to advance the work that we're doing from an environmental equity perspective. The second is to engage. As you heard, there's a lot of regulation and a lot of programs that are being developed, but us in the environmental field, especially around climate investments, need to hear a lot more from public health officials as a way to craft the programs that are being developed to make sure that they deliver public health outcomes. So the Strategic Growth Council has guidelines that are being reviewed as we speak, and making sure those guidelines have good language and good outcome-based strategies for public health will be important. And another point that I'll make on engaging is the 3-year investment plan that really guides the way that climate investments are done in California is up for review now. It'll be decided on at the end of the year. And so this is a really great opportunity to engage in that process and make sure that the programs that we develop also have public health outcomes, as the focus. And if there are any programs that could reduce greenhouse gases and meet a lot of the needs in public health, the public health departments care about, those could be introduced into this 3-year investment plan. And then the last piece that I'll say is around organizing. Really, what we've seen is that these multi-issue, multi-coalition, statewide efforts are really, powerful. And when it comes to pushing policy at the state level and making sure that we have better statewide policy, we can't do without it. So I know for a fact, living in the Bay Area, that a lot of the Bay Area folks are really organized. They're really building bridges across issue areas. And I think what I hear a lot often is that in Southern California, we need more help with that. Greenlighting is committed to helping the state organize around these issues. And I think we'll love to connect with more folks in the public health arena to be able to carry a more holistic approach to community investment, which I think is going to really uplift our communities and make their outcomes a lot better. So with that, I think I'm going to close. And if you want any more information about climate investments and how they're producing community benefit in disadvantaged communities, I encourage you to visit upliftcalifornia.org, where we have a lot of information about that. And if you want to get in contact with me, there's my email address, and I look forward to answering any questions that anyone has.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Alvaro. That was just a great presentation, and it's really clear to see what huge potential there is, like you're saying, to build a pathway out of poverty and really address a lot of the root causes of issues faced by disadvantaged communities. So it's really uplifting, as you say, and exciting. We're going to move now into question and answer and discussion. Again, we encourage everybody to just unmute yourself and dive into the conversation with questions or comments. And just a quick reminder of how you can do that. Again, just unmuting yourself by clicking on the unmute button, the little microphone icon here that's circled in orange. You can feel free to raise your hand, but you can also just dive on in. And if you're feeling shy, do feel free to enter a question here at the bottom in the questions panel. And Holly is also going to be doing some live recording of points of discussion, so that we can just help track some of the conversation here as well. So again, if anybody would like to dive in, please feel free. And also, maybe while people are collecting their thoughts, I can start with a couple of questions here, and from our submitted questions and others. So, Karen, I just had a question for you. You had mentioned this new Office of Sustainability as one avenue for potential local-state collaboration with local health departments and the state. I don't think that's directly under your purview, but I'm just wondering if you can say a little bit more about what that might look like. And again, I'm not sure if that's in place now or something that's evolving, but how might local departments who are on the ground working with disadvantaged communities and the population more broadly, able to bring information and perspective to some of the work the state's doing through this office?
Well, can you hear me, Katie?
Yeah, I hear you great.
All right, that's great. So a couple of things. First of all, the Office of Sustainability has a place on our website. So if you go to the Water Board's website at www.waterboards.ca.gov and go to financial assistance, which is in the center of the page, one of the key topics, you'll be able to get to the Office of Sustainability. And there are,
there is both direct contact information under the office's heading. So if you need technical assistance, it tells you who you can contact for that, whether it's for wastewater or drinking water. There's a newsletter, as I mentioned, that really does try to stay abreast of all the new developments, both related to funding and technical assistance. So funding that may be available or is coming available, but also where we are working with local entities to provide direct assistance, like through self-help or other organizations. That information will be available. You can sign up to receive program updates. You can send questions. There's a lot of opportunities for interaction through the office. They were created to be that link between our technical and financial programs and the local level, to really consolidate all of those that support that local communities need in one place.
That's great. And it was also really nice to hear too about the kind of one-stop application process for all the different Prop 1 programs.
Yeah, that was new development this year. It's been in place probably for about 6 months now, and even though some of those funding programs are actually we're not in the process of a formal solicitation yet, we are accepting applications. So we're not holding back and telling folks to wait.
Great. And that's just for the Prop 1 programs, and it doesn't include additional funding streams?
It does include some of the additional funding streams, absolutely. So the wastewater SRF and some of the other funding programs, our staff are trained across all of the programs to try to figure out how to put the best financial package together.
Great. Well, what a wonderful opportunity for those of us at the local level. Thank you. All right. I'm going to encourage everybody on the call here to jump in with your reflections, feedback, questions. Give a moment.
Katie, this is Tracy. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I hear you great. Thanks.
Okay, I'm in a really loud place, so I apologize for that. I had a couple quick questions, and then I'll put myself on mute so you don't hear all the noise around me. I wanted to thank both presenters. They were excellent. My first question for Karen is, it sounds like with the successful program integration that CDPH doesn't have a direct role any longer, and I'm wondering if she can speak to maybe what she sees as opportunities for local health departments given kind of the change in that dynamic. And then I have a question for Alvaro as well. Hi, Alvaro. Was wondering if you might be able to provide some sample language or describe the best way that we can optimize putting into some of the language that the contract, that the employment awards for green infrastructure are targeted to low-income folks, so that we can get that kind of embedded. I'm wondering if there are some examples you could share.
Great. Well, let's take those in turn. First of all, Karen, do you want to go ahead and address that question, given that CDPH is no longer directly engaged in drinking water, what the opportunities for local health departments are given that change in dynamic?
Well, you know, I'm going to have to apologize at the outset, Katie and Tracy, in that because the drinking water program, you know, reports directly to the executive director, I don't feel like I'm in a position to be able to talk about those specific opportunities, and because I don't really know how things operated previously, but I know that the district, the branch offices, et cetera, that we are doing what we can to try to be able to make them interface more effectively. We're trying to build out their online capability, their web capacity. We're trying to build out database infrastructure, et cetera, so folks can interact more effectively with them, get more information readily. But I can't, I apologize, speak to kind of how that relationship worked before and how it might change now.
Well, that's really helpful, covering those different entry points. Thank you. And Alvaro, how about over to you? Any sample language or ways to best optimize the award of green employment to target low-income employees?
Well, I would start with, I think I shared some resources with you, and I'm sure those will be made available to folks after the webinar. But definitely take a look at some of the reports that highlight the multiple benefits of green infrastructure, specifically as it relates to jobs, and I think you'd find some good language there. But I think overall, what I would definitely say about this point is that coming from public health officials, that upstream investments in health really are like, it's almost like let's prevent disease before it happens. So if having a higher opportunity for income security for as it relates to climate investments, for affordable housing, for good water infrastructure, for healthy places to walk and recreate, that kind of language and I think that kind of argument resonates really well with the state officials that are doing a lot of the work on climate investments. I think that's the type of information they want to hear, and it couldn't come from a better source than from public health folks that are saying when you invest in walkable, safe communities, we're really investing in the health outcomes of the communities that live there.
That's great. And just building on that, I know that you'd mentioned climate action plans as one kind of key area of funding coming forward. I can't remember the number, but I think you said maybe $500 million in the coming year or years. And I know that that's an area where many of our jurisdictions are deeply engaged right now in building out climate action plans. Is there any more that you can say kind of in that context, or ideas for how those of us developing climate action plans could be integrating some more of those principles?
Yeah, so the two things with climate action plans. One is that the $500 million that have been proposed for a climate action plan program has not been approved yet. So definitely get in contact with your state legislator and provide support for the concept of climate action plan programs. So that's one. And then second is that I mentioned this 3-year investment plan process. We are collecting letters of support for an ongoing climate action plan program that would, essentially reward the planning process that a lot of you have already started or completed to develop really strong, solid climate action plans that are lacking one source of funding that could, really make it come true. So I'm happy to share more information about our process and our efforts to try to get that established in the program in the 3-year investment cycle. I think just continuing to connect with folks on the ground and working with them to craft climate action plans that really are responsive to the needs of community members and that incorporate the strategies that they've identified as the ways to make their communities more resilient.
Great, thank you. And we'll just take one more question here, a submitted question from one of our audience members for you again, Alvaro. Can you just talk a little bit about what considerations do you think about when also thinking about green infrastructure while preventing gentrification?
Oh, yeah, that's a great question. So this is a question that I think we need a lot of help with because we have SB 535 provides funding for programs that reduce greenhouse gases, produce multiple benefits, and address displacement and gentrification. But the strategies that have been identified, I think, have a lot of room to grow. And unfortunately, I think we're at a time where a lot of cities are struggling with this concept, with this idea of gentrification, and really what's the right way to confront that. So, the short answer that I have right now is that as it comes to gentrification, is that when we make investments in green infrastructure, which really improves the quality of life in the communities that the investment is taking place, that is linked to economic opportunities for folks that live there. So either local hire, requirements, minority women-owned business enterprise goals, and any other opportunity to provide economic resiliency to the people that live there, I think is one way. But again, I feel like there's so much research about this, but at the same time, I feel like there's so much that we still need to learn about how do we help folks stay in the place that they lived in and, kind of confronted a lot of environmental issues. And as those communities get improved, they don't get displaced.
Great. Well, thank you so much for that, Alvaro. We're at time here, so I'm just going to wrap us up quickly with, again, just a huge thank you to both of our speakers today. That both of those presentations were just chock full of wonderful and helpful information and avenues for us. I just want to point out our final webinar in our series, and that's bringing together all 3 tracks of our webinar series, where we're going to be looking at where the highest opportunities are for next steps. So we'll be reconvening our 3 tracks. And then just, wanted to point out again this website link. We'll be posting all of our information from this webinar as well as the resources that both of our speakers talked about on the website, and we'll be sending you out a follow-up email probably early next week. So with that, thank you again to everybody for joining us. Please take just a couple of moments once the webinar concludes to fill out our evaluation survey, and feel free to be in touch with any further questions or comments. Thank you so much, and goodbye.
Thank you.
Thank you.